Welcome to my newly redesigned Sick Biker channel. Today I'm excited to show you a thorough road bike check in just 15 steps. Don't worry, it's gonna be very easy, simple and short. Everyone can do it. It will take you maybe 15 to 20 minutes. You simply look at what I do with the bike, pause the video, do the same with yours, and then proceed to the next step. We have a great example here because this bike belongs to my riding buddy Edwin, who is very strong. And the bike has been ridden for around 15,000 kilometers or just below 10,000 miles, so that's quite a bit. And since we have February, it's been ridden for a couple of months in the winter conditions. Yes, outside, not on the indoor trainer. So we're gonna definitely find some issues here. If you do this twice, maybe 3 times a year with your bike, you're gonna save a lot of money, not because you're not gonna have to pay for the check, for the bike check, but you're gonna avoid many serious issues with the bike. Are you ready? Let's do it. First step, having the bike still on the floor, we lift it a little bit and then let it just fall like that. If there would be any play in the bearings, in the hubs, or even some problems with the frame, the bikes would normally give us some strange sounds. This is just the overall and super quick overview of the shape of the bike. But as you can hear, or you can't hear, this bike doesn't give us any warning in terms of the sound. You can hear the chain in the rear, but it's okay. It's also a good idea to brake the front brake and push the bike back and forth. We can also use our fingers and put them just around the bearings, the upper bearings and the bottom bearings of the headset, in order to find any movement between the steering tube or the fork and the frame. There is no movement here. Now we can proceed to the next step. Before we proceed to the second step, I have to explain to you something. I'm using a bike stand. You don't have to have bike stand. You can do the bike check on the floor. It will be maybe a little bit more complicated, but you will do it. You will make it. Here we have a carbon frame. The seat post is the arrow-shaped seat post, so I wouldn't be able to put it into my bike stand and squeeze it. And carbon frames, we never squeeze the carbon. So just for you to know, I'm not squeezing the frame. The bike now sort of hangs on the top tube. I will only close it so that it will be quite stable here, but I'm not squeezing the carbon. And that means I would also not do anything with the bike where I need to use a lot of torque, because that would put pressure on the top tube. Step 2 is the frame set check, and for that we need to remove our wheels. As you can see, the calipers on the road bike's wheels have little lever here for opening a bigger gap between the pads. So find it and open it. In case you're using the Campagnolo shifters, you won't have the lever on the calipers, but a small kind of a button or pin that you have to push in here on your shifter. Then we need to open up the lever on our skewer, just like that. Sometimes also we need to unscrew this nut here so that the wheel will be free to be removed. In this case, quite a lot. When removing the rear wheel, we do everything exactly the same, and it's also a really good idea to shift the chain to the smaller ring in the front and smaller ring in the rear, so that there will be very little tension on the chain. It will be easier for us to open up the derailleur and remove the wheel. Now we have great access to a whole frame set, the frame and the fork. We should be looking at pretty much each area of the frame, because different frame designs will tend to break in different places. But the most vulnerable, especially for carbon frames, are the area of the head tube. Inspect the head tube. Look for something like a hair-like, it looks like scratch, but might be a crack. Use your nails to go over it and make sure these are not cracks. Also the seat post clamp area, this is the internal one. On many bikes we have external one. Make sure that the frame is okay. If we are experiencing some chain drop, the area of the crankset here should be also very well inspected. Look, it's inside the bike whether the wheel hasn't damaged your frame. Of course, the drops of your frame, sometimes they crack, sometimes they experience some problems. So make sure you inspect that. Also here in the fork inside, make sure that your wheel did not wrap too much, maybe because if it was out of true, or maybe when you hit some pothole, it might cause some issues inside here. Moving on to step 3, the wheels. The first thing here is the tires, and that's the first big issue. As you can see, the tire is worn out. You can find many holes here, many cuts. You can find some pieces of little rocks or some metal even here in the tire. That means we don't have the best traction here, and also it is super easy to get a flat. As a matter of fact, we went with Edwin last week and he did get a flat tire. This tire should be replaced as soon as possible. You also want to inspect the sidewall, and here we can see that there was some rubbing between the braking pad and the sidewall, because it's just worn out here on the side. So definitely the tire has to be replaced. Step number 4, still on the wheel, that's the Freehub. It's the mechanism that allows us to spin backwards and have a power transfer when we want to move forwards. We want to listen to the Freehub, whether it doesn't sound like being very dry, or those tick 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 sounds are maybe very uneven, then it might show wear of the poles. So I'm gonna let you listen to the Freehub here. It sounds pretty good, but quite dry. Step number 5, still about the wheels. We want to look at the wheel and see whether it's true. Looking for any motion from side to side, up and down. Make sure you look at the rim, which you don't see right now, because also the tire can be out of true. It should be maybe reinstalled or just thrown away. So we're gonna look at the rim. So this is the perspective we're looking for. Looking at the rim, moving against the braking pad, we can see some movement up and down, like maybe 1 or 2 millimeters, which is just okay. We can true it, but you could still ride the wheel, in my opinion, just as it is, but I'm gonna try to fix it. Step number 6, still about the wheels, it's the bearings in the hubs. We want to see how long is the wheel spinning and what kind of sounds it does make. It spins okay, but sometimes when the hubs are absolutely dry, the wheel will still spin quite nicely, but we can hear the hubs, and then it needs some grease. That's it for the wheels. Now step number 7, but since we talked about the bearings of the wheels, let's just check all the other bearings in the bike, and these are in the headset. One bearing is placed here and the other one right there, of course inside the head tube. We should feel no resistance at all, maybe only the resistance made by the cables in the headset. Here, as you can see, the wheel stops, and that means these bearings need some new grease, cleaning, or perhaps even the bottom one should be replaced. So we definitely have to check it out. This is a serious issue here. Step 8, we are halfway through. Another set of bearings is placed right here inside of the frame, in the BB or bottom bracket. We don't want to have any play on these, so holding on to the frame and moving the crank arm from side to side, one crank arm and another one will let us check out for the play. Now, if you want to see how freely the crankset moves, on some bikes you will be able to simply remove the chain like that and spin the crankset. It's not possible on this bike, so do not damage the frame when the chain is off. You can also simply remove the chain if you have a quick link and then spin the crankset. This one spins quite nicely, quite freely. I don't see any water, any mud between the spindle and the bearing, so should be okay. I have no complaints about this. Step 9, another bearing on our bike is placed in the pedals. So we want to spin the pedals. There is no friction here, there is no play on the pedals. We should check both, of course, but I can kind of hear those bearings a little bit too much. That means these may be quite dry. You can still ride the pedal, but re-greasing the bearing inside the pedal now will prolong the lifetime of the bearing and the pedal. Steps 10 and 11 are for brakes. This is our safety control, right? So in step 10, I'm gonna just brake the brake, feeling for some friction. I don't feel any friction right here. That means that the housing and the cable should be quite clean, but as you can see here, the cable isn't in very good condition. How do we call it in English? What's happening to this cable here? Help me out. So this cable will be replaced, because if it wears out like this inside the housing, then it causes a lot of friction. So inspect the housing and the cables. Step 11 is for our braking material. It's not only the pads, but both the pads and the rim surface. So how thin or thick are the pads? These are, I would say, still okay, but close to the minimum limit. Some of the pads have a short indicator, small indicator on them. So make sure these are not too thin, because if you wear those out during one ride, that means you're gonna start braking with the metal cartridge against the rim, and that's really bad. Now, the rim. Is the surface of the rim quite even and smooth? This one looks okay. On some rims you're gonna have the wear indicator, like a small hole, like a drill, or a groove on the rim, and if it disappears, that means that the rim is already too thin. So make sure, if you have a new bike and if it has that indicator, that this indicator is still visible, is still there while you are using the wheel. Steps 12, 13 and 14 are for the drivetrain and the shifting system. So we're gonna definitely want to just try to shift the gears and feel how they work. How does the derailleur respond to our movement of the shifter? And I can feel the friction. While I'm pushing the shifting lever, I feel that the derailleur does not respond. So the housings, the cables need to be replaced. But I found here some other issue, quite rare, should be rare. And it was when the derailleur was on the smaller ring here, and I shift the rear, so I push the right shifter, the front derailleur moved a little bit. And that means internal cable routing has been done in the wrong way, because the cables somehow interact with each other. Really, really bad. It can be difficult. I could also see some rust where the cable for the front derailleur goes, so it's pretty messy inside. So the cables and the housings need to be replaced. Step 13, chain and our rings wear. I have a chain wear indicator. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it without the chain indicator, which is really cool, and I highly recommend buying it. And I'm checking whether the chain has been worn down. Yes, it has been. Both on 0.5 and 0.75, my chain indicator goes all the way down. That means the chain is just worn out, and we have to replace the chain. Probably it's a little bit too late for it. It should be done like maybe a couple of hundreds kilometers before. This is how you can roughly check out the chain without the chain indicator. I'm pulling the chain from the crankset, and as you can see, it moves on all the teeth of it. It's on the bigger chain ring. That means it is way too late to replace the chain. It should be done before. The new chain will only move just like that and not move further than maybe 4 links, just like that. And I would like to see the chain move maybe up to here perhaps before I replace it. This one moves on all the teeth, so it's worn out. Not replacing the chain will cause a wear of our teeth, and that can be costly. That's why I'm telling you that doing this bike check will save you a lot of money, because now this chainring, the big one, should be replaced. The small one, I know Edwin doesn't use it and it looks as new almost, but these teeth are worn out. You may use those with a new chain, but then the chain will also wear out more quickly on such a teeth which are so small right now. This applies also to the cassette in the rear, so most likely when we replace the chainring in the front, the cassette will also need to be replaced, and that's costly. Step 14, we're coming to the end, is simply spinning the crankset backwards and looking at how true the crankset is, the chainring is. It might be sometimes that when you are getting strong, the crankset isn't just strong enough for you. I can see that this chainring, at least the chainring, isn't actually very true. This can also cause some problems with the gear change, or at least with the rubbing. The chain will be rubbing against the front derailleur, so sometimes checking how true actually is the chainring or even a whole crankset is also a good idea. This one has a movement like 1 or 2 millimeters from side to side. Some budget crankset, the cheap ones, will have it from the very beginning, like the square tapered and Octalink quite often would have this problem. Finally, step number 15, not such obvious one for some riders, but in my opinion, really important one, and that's checking out all the bolts. First off, is there any rust on the thread? Re-greasing maybe those a little bit might help, because especially after the winter, if the bolts will stuck in the thread, you might damage the frame trying to unscrew the bolt in order to replace, for example, the bottle cage. So this is an important one. If you don't know how to do it with the headset bolts, or you don't know how much torque to use on the seat clamp, you don't have a torque wrench, leave it. But at least those bolts for the bottle cages, maybe you have some other screws like for fenders, racks. Checking out those can be a really good idea. Also checking out the bolts on your pedals, especially the MTB specific ones, might be very good idea. So this was a thorough road bike check in 15 steps with me, with Cycbiker. How do you like the new form of my videos? I'm gonna try to take it to the next level, so your feedback is really appreciated here. The MTB check, no problem, I'm gonna do it. There will be some differences, so I'm gonna do the MTB specific one. I'm gonna just add some steps to the MTB, and now just bring the bike to your workshop, to your room, and do it with me. You're gonna have lots of fun. Thanks for watching. See ya.